Welcome to the Business Legends Podcast, where we interview business leaders and entrepreneurs so that you can learn from their successes, become inspired, and meet the people that make change happen. I'm the host of the show, Reese Arlen, along with my co-host, Christian Webb. Say hello, good morning, and things.
Hello. We have somebody that's exactly opposite of me today because I am the worst soccer player in existence.
The worst soccer player in existence he is, and you can just see, we're going to pan over to you right there because we saw a little cringe factor when we say soccer. We're going to do it all day.
His eyebrows went together. It was like...
just a little freeze frame cringe. Austin, make that happen. So today we are joined by a very special guest with, I might say, in 70 plus episodes, the coolest accent of any guest that we have ever had, Mr. Rani Ghaziri. Rani, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yep, absolutely. So let's dig right into it. QC Mutiny. So first off, what a name. How did you come up with that name? And tell our listeners all about QC Mutiny and what you are.
Well, to be honest, it wasn't me that came up with the name. Mm-hmm. So I inherited the name. I inherited the first generation of players. There were about 16 of these kids, all born in 2004, 2005, when it was still a mixed birth year for school out this way. Mm-hmm. And it was a club created by a couple of parents that were disgruntled with the layout and the education their kids were getting, and they would come together and train one day a week, and it was a fully sponsored program, a non-profit organization, and from there it just took off. When I I flew out here in 2014 and was lucky enough to meet a couple of the families that headed it up. One in particular had two boys that were in the program, and from there, I was handed the keys to this project, and we just ran with it.
Mm-hmm. It's incredible, and so that was almost 10 years ago. How did you? What was the process like to end up here in 2014 to begin with? I mean, why Charlotte of all places?
Yeah, a very good question. I would have never have imagined being out in the States, let alone in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. I mean, any story that has some meat behind it has normally got a woman somewhere in there. So
that is true.
I met my now wife, and she was based out this way. So she actually went to school over here. She's Lebanese, born and bred, but actually born in Charlotte, and went to school out this way, and her parents and her dad in particular has been here a long time. They're involved in real estate. And she dragged me over. So,
were you kicking and screaming, or has it been a good transition for you?
To be honest, I would say initially I didn't see myself settling down in Charlotte. It's it's much slower than what I'm used to.
People complain about the traffic all the time here. What are you talking about?
I think again, it's far different to the cities I've lived in the past. I mean, one of them being Beirut, which is absolute havoc. So you're lucky if you know which side of the road you're driving on there. So I mean, that's what I'm used to, is just crazy. Mm-hmm. And out here, it was just very chill.
Yeah.
And I mean, you go out for dinner, and by 8 o'clock they're kicking you out the restaurant because everyone wants to go to bed.
Right. Yeah, be honest with us. Did you get used to Charlotte? Are you enjoying the relaxed mode now?
I enjoy it. I think I enjoy it more knowing that it's a great hub, and it's easy to jump from here to New York, to Chicago, to I mean, there's plenty of places you can go and play
anywhere,
and and enjoy. But another part of the U.S. that I'm enjoying is I mean, I like my extreme sports, so I like to snowboard, and I mean, I have access to that. It's 4 or 5 hours on the plane, and there we are. We're in Utah, and and we're on the slopes, or Colorado, and you're on the slopes. So I mean, it's nice. It's been a nice adventure. Mm-hmm. If I'd come out this way and it was just like this, I don't know how long I would have survived.
No, we travel for fun too. Like we went to Breck and Aspen this year. We love that stuff.
Oh, fantastic!
You haven't been out there Must do.
Well, that's an expensive trip that my wife's been knocking on the door for.
There you go. You better be doing some stuff right then.
Just like any good story with any good meat starts with a woman knocking on the door.
There
you go.
So
Full circle.
Yeah.
So in 2004, you were trusted to take over this, I guess, academy. Is that the proper term?
Yeah, it's 2014 actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. 2014. You were trusted to do that. How did you build enough reputation and clout or whatever to actually be accepted to take over something like that?
It's a very good question too. I mean, when I came out this way, that was always a worry, always a concern. I didn't graduate in the US, and you can see that it's somewhat of a prerequisite that everybody asks you, where did you graduate from? You know, I mean, that's what builds your rep somewhat in the US, and I never graduated out this way. So maybe there was a pro and a con to that, you know, being someone from outside that's able to bring a new perspective, maybe worked in my favor. As I said, I mean, the people that were involved in the program to begin with were very open-minded, and they were ready to listen. And this wasn't my first project, so I mean, I believe this was a tough project. I will say that tougher times came down the line, especially with COVID.
Oh,
so
I bet.
we can even touch base on all of that later on. But I mean, building the first academy out in Beirut was unheard of, you know. And I remember graduating from college in the UK and telling my cousin that I'm coming back to Lebanon to build an academy for the Lebanese people, and he just laughed. He said, "You're insane. What are you even thinking? You know, you think you're going to come over here, you know, and make it work?" I said, "Well, you know, I mean, I'm going to give it a shot." So, I mean, that first academy was built out there in 2006, and it's still booming. So, I mean, I sold off my shares to my partner. And I mean, I think we've had something like 15 national team players, you know, progress through that academy now that are involved in the Lebanese national team.
So I guess you made it work.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, you have to have talented young players. You have to have, you know, families that believe in the process, and you have to have, you know, the right personnel. I think the right personnel is what, I mean, it's a fine mix. And I think, you know, if you don't have the right people working with these players, then, you know, you're never going to bring out their inner self.
I have kind of a strange question for you. So you're developing an academy for soccer. every time he's like, it's like a dagger to your heart. You got to be used to it now. 10 years of dealing through it, I guess.
I say it.
Yeah.
It's insane.
We have officially indoctrinated you into the United States.
Really
by
bad.
the way.
When I'm in England and I say it, I have to catch my tongue, and then I get looked at. Am I going to walk out this room alive?
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the academy process. So 2006, you're developing it in Beirut. You know, what was your process like as far as developing? I don't want to call it a curriculum necessarily, but you know, in any sports you have, you know, skills sections, training and conditioning sections, and of course teamwork sections and things like that. How did you go about designing your program ultimately?
So obviously it's recognizing that you can't do it all. You have to bite off little bits at a time. And with the program out there, we started in the school system. So you have a big expat community. A lot of them are Americans, a lot of them are English, a lot of them have come from outside, and their parents are diplomats. So one of the schools that I was lucky enough to start this program through had my brother and sister in it. So it was the American community school of Beirut, and I believe we've got someone famous that actually attended school there. So Keanu Reeves went to school there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's quite
Just
funny.
watched one of his movies.
I love Keanu.
Yeah, so he did some time out in Beirut as well, and he went to that school. So it gave me a good foundation of families and players that we could set a standard for. And from there, we were able to then infiltrate the marketplace and look for those young players that were unable to afford a program like this. And it's basically what allowed us to build the idea behind what an academy should look like. And it's not just about, you know, a player can afford to play, you know? And I I mean, again, over this way, it's a big topic, pay to play, right?
Right.
And in Lebanon, I will have to admit that that's how we started the project. It was a pay to play project, you know, because a lot of the clubs that were local were sectioned off and would hail towards a certain community or a certain sect or a certain religion. So Lebanon's a hotbed of different religions and different sects, and their football clubs basically followed suit. And a lot of the families that were over there with children that were educated didn't want to put their players or their children in those environments. So
Interesting.
that's why there was nowhere for them to really play or really excel apart from at school. So
Yeah.
a year-round program didn't exist. So we were able to put together this year-round program utilizing the facilities, which were state-of-the-art facilities at these great schools, you know, and bring kids together from all religions, from all sects, and actually show our hand as to how Lebanon should look as a team with everybody involved. And I mean, it was, as I said, my cousin looked at me and said, "You're insane. It's not going to work." But you know, it appealed to the masses. It appealed to the families we wanted to bring on board initially. And from there, we were actually able to infiltrate into the clubs. So we would go into those clubs, which would be maybe predominantly a Christian club or predominantly a Muslim club, you know, and you would be able to go in there and handpick the players because, I mean, they weren't paying to play. They were
Right.
being picked up off the streets, you know, they couldn't really afford shoes. And wow, the talent was crazy, you know? So we would go in there and we would talk to the player and the parent and basically say, you know, we'll take him on board and we'll give him the right environment to grow. So we were taking these little diamonds, I would call them, you know, rough diamonds, needed a bit of polishing, but, you know, bringing them in to our environment where you had, you know, maybe the mummy and puppy boys that, you know, had the cash flow and had a better life in that sense, you know, and we were able to mingle those two together or commingle them. And you ended up having the graft and the fight from those young players, you know, that realized that this was their opportunity, this was their chance, their only chance, you know, that's how they maybe saw it. And they brought that graft and grit to the game. And then, you know, the other kids were able to help us build the foundation of the club and fund it somewhat, you know, so it was somewhat of a Robin Hood style program.
Yeah. Did you have to do anything to make sure everybody got along, or did it just naturally happen with the environment?
You know, you're always going to end up with a little bit of tit for tat, especially when a tackle comes in, you know, and you got one
That's
of these.
sports.
Yeah, but you've got one of those kids maybe that we did bring from outside, you know, roughing someone up, you know, and it maybe, you know, sparked off a little bit of something. But at the end of the day, we had such solid buy-in from the families that they understood, you know, that this was part and parcel of the game. You can't go, you know, skipping around the football pitch. And again, you look at the old days, you know, the tackles were flying in left, right, and center. Now you just have to brush past the player and you pick up a yellow card.
Right.
So I actually enjoy that gritty side of the game, you know, getting stuck in. Obviously not being nasty, not looking to break a leg, but, you know, if you take legs with ball, then so be it, you know.
Yeah.
That's the game, you know, and that's what we wanted these players to understand. It wasn't all just being pretty.
Yeah.
It was, you know, you have to know how to get stuck in.
But I noticed you didn't bring up anything about their religious views, so it was really just about the that was left at the door.
100%. And we made sure that was left at the door. We made sure that nobody really knew what sort of background, you know, or where they had come from or what religion they were. I don't believe that should dictate anything in life. And it was very difficult in a country where it is so prominent to leave that at the door, but we were able to, and you know, you ended up with these really tight bonds over the 10 years that I was involved in that program. You ended up with these really tight bonds and families that would do anything for each other, you know, and it was really nice to see. And I believe we somewhat changed, the marketplace for the game, because we were the first academy out there, and now I believe there's something like 10 or 11 or 12 academies out there that are trying to replicate the model, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so I bet nobody told them that they couldn't do it after you'd already had success.
Yeah, copied.
I mean, I'm just happy that there's movement, there's a movement there, and there's change, and I think that that's the most important thing, is sparking change.
Mm-hmm. So let's fast forward back to the U.S. And you've taken over this academy. Obviously, the hurdles are way different. What's new? Like, what are you running into on the daily basis with this new type of academy in America?
Well, I mean,
or shoot in Charlotte, I guess.
Yeah.
I think coming in with the previous success in the academy that I did have, and I'd obviously felt I could conquer anything. So I did come in. I might have had a little bit of arrogance to me when I sat down at the table and I said, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. I really, to be honest, at the beginning, didn't have a clue what sort of hurdles I was coming up against, because I haven't lived here. I haven't handled it before. Mm-hmm. So saying something like, well, hand me the keys to these 14 kids and, we'll turn it into a club, was easy enough to say. And I remember some of the faces of these families, in the first board meeting when I was sitting there, saying, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to have our own facility, and we're going to be playing at the top level, and we're going to be recognized academy by the US Soccer, and I'm going to be bringing over a technical director from Spain, and you could see these families just looking at me like I was insane. Mm-hmm. And I probably was. But at the end of the day, I think if you graft and you believe in the process and you believe in what you are capable of doing, and we were very lucky, the foundations were there. We had 14, 15, 16 really good young players that were ambitious, and families that were bought into trying something different. I think that was the biggest hurdle, is convincing parents and families that different is okay. The masses seem to want to all levitate or transition towards what is easy, and Jimmy, Billy and Bobby are all there, so that must be the place to be. Or when you go on Google and you press search for academy, that's the one that pops up, so that must be the place to go, rather than doing a little bit more research and recognizing what a developmental program should entail and what it should look like, and is your player or is your child getting the best out of their time. And over the years, you've realized that families sort of realize that things aren't how they want them to be, mm-hmm. and might step away, but it's few and far between. It's still very difficult to educate families on the process and what they're receiving, because whether we like it or not, this isn't a US sport, I mean, right. Hopefully down the line, we see it establishing itself more and more. Yeah. I would love to see the US win the World Cup, and there's no reason why they shouldn't. You guys have plenty of talent.
I have a sidebar here. I have an interesting comment about that. I saw a meme online. I think I told you about this, but it said the real reason that the United States I think I told you this on the phone, but the real reason the United States doesn't win the World Cup is because we don't put the athletes that we care about in the positions. So if you put like LeBron James as the keeper and like Steph Curry as the forward, we'd be scoring points all day long. Just put LeBron as a big statue up there. I mean, he'll block half the net anyways. So
I think those. You see, that's where your success comes from. I mean, right. Basketball or even American football, mm-hmm. or even baseball, or what I've seen as predominantly American sports, you have superstars. Mm-hmm. You've got one star hitter, or
right.
And I couldn't even name a superstar in soccer that we have, just because I don't watch it. I guess,
not in the United States.
You've got plenty of talent, but ultimately it's a team sport.
Right.
And it's a team sport where every part needs to be working simultaneously, and it needs to be a very well-oiled system. And if it isn't, and there's a kink in the armor somewhere, then.
But other countries have their superheroes, like mm-hmm. Ronaldo.
100%. But they also have a better system and structure in place. I think from grassroots all the way through. I mean, Germany from grassroots all the way through, Spain, France. I mean, you can see that they have a far better foundations. Mm-hmm. So when they're feeding up the ladder, there's already a system of play, a style of play. Let's just say that the manager of the national team is expecting players to come through understanding already. I mean, here I just feel like you always have a couple of kinks in the armor. And when you play against the best teams in the world, they're going to sniff it out, and they're going to find you out very, very quickly. You know? And
So earlier you just mentioned, like, not just literally just a second ago, you were mentioning like everybody just staying with their norm. Like the first name pops up on Google, they're like, that's the academy I'm going to go to. I have an experience with that. We have a good buddy named Tommy DiBernardo. He used to be like really big into UFC or MMA, and he would tell you, he'd like all these would pop up, like, I don't know, like boxing academy, blah 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 blah. He's like, all those bunch of pansies. And then you go like 3 pages past, and you'll find this one little shop, and it'll be like the hole in the wall, the dark cellar. Yeah. And he'll be like, that's where all the good fighters go. Yeah. And nobody knows about that place except for the good fighters.
You know, I love hearing that too, because I believe that that's somewhat the model we go with is word of mouth. You know, ultimately we put a product out there, and the product is clear for everyone to see. And if you really dig deep, or you really do your investigative work, then you can see, you know, you can make the choice. We don't want to ram it down your neck. We're not here to convince you that this is where your player should be. You know, we're out there. You can find us. It's whether or not you dig deep enough, or you're interested enough in the game to find out where that hole in the wall is. I love that expression because it's so true, and it's so true across the board. If you go out for a bite to eat, I'd much rather go and find the hole in the wall. You know that you're gonna get great food there. The street food, you know it's gonna be affordable, but it's gonna taste great, and you're not spending $50 for a fish. You know,
for a little circle of lasagna.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd much rather. I mean, I'm a big fan of the hole in the wall.
Yeah.
I get it.
For sure.
Yeah.
What was I going to ask? Something about, so, you know, we met you through Chris Matthew, whose episode will be, he wanted to do a redo, so his episode will actually be after yours, which is okay. We spent a good deal of time talking about, his company is 424, and he gets that, of course, from soccer, from the, you could explain it far better than I ever could, but one of the things that his philosophies is that you take, you know, these orientations where everybody kind of has their position, has their job, and things like that, and he applies that towards business. Can you think of any particular example of where, you know, you've taken the formations of soccer or anything like that and applied it towards the production of your academy, or any examples like that?
I wouldn't say formations per se. First of all, let me say a big shout out to Chris Matthews. Wonderful guy, and one of the first people that I met out here.
Yeah, he certainly is.
Yeah, he was on the board of those 16 players to begin with as Mutiny, and
one of the ones looking at you like you were crazy.
Yeah.
Well, actually, he liked the crazy. So
that sounds a lot
I like
like
to
him.
surround myself with people that appreciate crazy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And Chris was one of them, and he liked the challenge, he liked the idea, he liked the fact that we were going to be a disruptor, and I think that that's what Chris is too, a market disruptor.
For sure.
I think it's very important to be that person. You know, ultimately, you can either just be one of the sheep, or you can lead the way in a different direction. It might not be for everybody. I've said this 100 times. You know, we're not the academy for everyone, but for the select few that do come our way, that believe in what we're doing, you know, they will be pleasantly surprised and enjoy the process.
And that's all you need.
That's
really.
it. That's it. You know, we only want the few. You know, and but again, I wouldn't apply formations to business strategy. I'll leave that to Chris.
Okay.
He does it very well.
Sure.
But what I will say is we do have our pillars. And
Sure.
our pillars are in place, and I believe that those are the pillars that I stand by all the way through, and I'll apply them to anything that I do, whether it be a soccer academy or another business model. And having those pillars in place are very important to me. You know, having trust and respect, and obviously dedication. You know, those are very important pillars that, you know, I think we can build anything on. You know, and the academy holds them true too.
Was that trust, respect, and dedication? Was that something that you kind of laid down the groundwork on in Beirut and brought that to Mutiny, or is that something that's just always been a part of your life, or how did that come about exactly?
I mean, I will attribute that to Dad.
Okay.
I think my mum was the free spirit, and my mum was the one that was, get out there and explore and try and, don't listen and, so she was the rebel, and that's probably where the rebel in me comes from. But my dad was the grounding, and my dad had those foundations in place that, made sure that I remained true to them. And, I think that that's what holds me. I believe I'm a good person. I like to think so, and I speak my mind. Not everyone agrees with what I say, but I try to remain within the lines, and I try and be very direct with how I feel. And yeah, I'll give that one to Dad.
Yeah, I mean, the only time everybody agrees with what you have to say is if you're not speaking your mind.
Right.
Well, again,
or you're speaking somebody else's mind.
If you're selling something, right, and you have to sell it hard, you'll make up anything you need to make up. I mean, again, you want to make a sale. It's not about a sale for us, I mean, you either like it or you don't. I mean,
I love that.
It's Marmite.
That's so freeing.
Marmite. That is such a. Do you know what Marmite is?
I don't.
I knew he didn't know what
wish I
Marmite
knew.
was. I don't even think you can get it in this. I mean, it's very hard to find. I'll put it that way.
It is. It's on the shelf in Whole Foods. But again, I mean, I've pulled out Marmite before, and people have looked at me and said, "Why are you eating that for?"
Yeah.
I said, "Hey,
We'll get you
like
some
it
on
or
the
you
way
don't."
out. Yeah, I don't even know how to describe what it is. It's like it's a spread. You put it on toast, but I honestly don't know how to describe it.
It's very hard to describe it.
Yeah.
It's like a yeast sort of extract, but
Yep.
it's dark in color. It's very salty. It's very strong.
Yep.
But I mean, it hits the spot somewhat. If you like the taste, the first bite you'll know.
Mm-hmm.
If you
That's
like
either going in the bin or
Yep.
or
So if I hate olives, will I potentially hate this?
Definitely.
probably.
Yeah.
So I
He
probably
won't like it.
Sounds like you're rather selective.
He
I
is.
am pretty
I will
sorry.
bet you any
I
amount
went
of
to
money
Greece
he
and I
hates
still
it.
didn't like olives.
Yeah.
So I'm never gonna
He's
like
not an olive
olives.
eater. But I will bet you any amount of money he'll hate Marmite for sure.
I'll try it though. I'll
yeah.
try it.
Yeah.
I actually got married in Greece.
I'll take a video of me trying Marmite and send it to you.
There
There you go.
We gotta find
I'd
it
love
first,
to see
though.
it.
That'll be perfect. Wow, you really are a world traveler, by the way. Every time we mention somewhere, you're like, "Oh yeah, I got married," or you didn't get. It's not always married, I guess. But
Well, hopefully not. Let's keep that on the down low. I've only had one marriage.
Please back on that one.
yeah. Sorry. But one thing I do want to ask is something that I'm particularly intrigued by is in Beirut you have all these crazy different cultures, and it's one thing to say we're from different places, but it's a whole other thing to say that our core belief and value system is something completely different. And there's similarities to be sure, but what we believe is something completely different. Have you experienced anything like that in the United States when you're working with these kids? Have you experienced any issues of, I don't want to say, discrimination or intolerance or whatever, but have you experienced any cultural issues with the production of your teams?
I think we've avoided that difficulty.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say avoided because obviously we need to address it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been addressed in a way where we will not stand for it
Right.
as a club, and everybody knows as they walk through the door what our beliefs are, and
Mm-hmm.
that this is an all-inclusive entity and an all-inclusive environment, and anyone that walks through the door is immediately, accepted. And if they aren't, then the problem isn't with the player that's walked through the door, it's with whoever else is causing the disruption.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we go a long way towards vetting the families and the players that ever walk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you see it when you get to college and
Sure.
college recruiters coming after a player. I mean, they know if they have a player that is worthwhile investing in, but then at the same time, it's the support network around that player, and the support network around the player is going to be their immediate family. And if the immediate family is the problem, then do you really want the player? Because you have a limited amount of time with that player. That
Right.
player is coming to training 4 days a week, an hour and a half, goes to games. We do our best to immerse the player in the environment and the culture and what we're trying to achieve. But for the most part, they go back home.
You're buying the family.
You are. The family is joining the club. So choosing very carefully at the start, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's a shame. We've turned away some very talented young men. But if the
I was about to ask about that.
We
Yeah.
have, and it's hard. It's a hard blow, because you can see the talent. You can see that it's a kid that deserves to be in that environment. But ultimately, down the line, you can recognize that it's just going to come with so much baggage. And are you ever going to be able to break through? You're educating an entire family. You're trying to educate the parents. You're trying to educate. It could be anybody in that family. I'm just saying, whoever has the biggest say, or whoever has the player's ear, is ultimately going to have the sway. And you're inheriting that entire group. And that entire group needs to be able to come through the door. So if we're picking up a player at 6 years old, we want to know that we would like to think that player is going to go all the way through to 19, unless they relocate or, but we would be the area that, or the environment that they grow and they develop in, So, that's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time.
That's 13 years.
Yeah.
Hearing headache if you've got the wrong family, and those phone calls, late night phone calls and text messages. And we've got just such strict policy in place whereby, we will communicate. We want to be open with our communication. We want to be transparent. But at the end of the day, I don't come into your workplace and tell you how to do your job.
Right.
If you're a dentist, you're a dentist. I'm not going to come in there and say, don't pull that tooth, pull this one. And unfortunately, that is the culture that I've come across in football in general, not just in the U.S.
I was about to ask.
Not just in the U.S.
Do you get that in other cultures and things like that as well?
I think it's at the top level of sport.
Sure.
It's at the top level of sport. The parents are ambitious for the player. They want the player to be successful. They want the player to reach his limits. But, sometimes they don't recognize that if they don't trust the process and they don't trust where they've put their player, then the player isn't going to progress. You're interfering with the process. You're being a kink in the armor again.
Right.
So it's just leave it alone. If it's a sore thumb and you can clearly see there's a problem there, then there's a problem with the entire environment. But if it's not a clear issue, leave it alone. Let it do its work. The kid is going to go through hardship. The kid is going to have stumbling blocks. The kid is not always going to have things his way, and that's not life. So we're teaching life lessons too, and we're hoping that the kids that progress through this academy, be it, are they going to be a pro? I mean, again, needle in a haystack. We've said it 100 times, and we're very honest about that too. We have a good, solid environment, but I'm not telling you join my club and you're going to be a pro. I mean, nobody can make that promise. Or you join our club and you're going to be a D1 full scholarship player. We'll do our best. We've got those processes in place and those programs in place to help get you there. But, the toolkit is provided. It's how you utilize the tools. And we just don't want rotten eggs from the get-go because, it's just very difficult to work with.
Yeah, sometimes working with parents especially, you can kind of tell, especially if they come in when you're talking to them, they're like, my son is going to play, blah, 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 and just kind of started on that attitude. I know that we've kind of had issues like that with different stuff that we've had as well. So what, you've been in this competitive sport environment your whole life, presumably. Has there been any, what I would call, other than COVID, of course, has there been any like shock value, something that just absolutely surprised you in your years of working sport? Like, maybe a player you didn't think was that talented ended up becoming a pro or something like that? Or has anything just absolutely shocked you that you didn't expect?
Not real shock, but, you also have a hotbed of different cultures here, and it might not be driven by religion. Maybe in other countries it is, but here you still have varying ideologies. You have families that come from different backgrounds, players that come from different countries that have moved over here. Values differ, and bringing all of that together is still a hot mess.
Sure.
So I mean, keeping that under control has probably been the trickiest part, but I mean, I think I'm somewhat lucky coming from what was a hot mess too, where I started and built the first academy. It's allowed me to circumvent those difficulties with slightly more ease than maybe I would have had I just been thrown in the deep end. And it's been fun. The process is fun, and we have had players come through the system that maybe we didn't think would progress as quickly as they have. But also, it's very difficult to look at a player at a certain age. Our identification process, I think, is probably one of our strongest key values. Is we just identify what we're looking for, what we recognize would fit our mold and our system down the line and over the years, and we can just pick it out of a bunch. And with the clubs in the current marketplace, I mean, there's kids everywhere. You're talking about some of these clubs that have 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, 12,000 players. How can you possibly keep track?
I didn't even know there was that big of academy.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I mean, in Raleigh, I think one of the clubs up there is teetering on around 20,000 kids.
Wow.
You don't keep track. You sit on your treasure trove of gold.
Right.
I mean, it definitely is a fantastic business model. I mean, our club, our academy, the outdoor program, because we also have an indoor program, but our programs are built in a way where the last player on the roster in our mindset should still be able to hustle their way into a starting 11 at some point. If they push, if they progress, if they develop the way we think they can, they should be competitive enough to at least get into that starting 11 at some point over the course of the year. Maybe hold down a place as well. So it's not, we can take 22 kids, let's fill the roster as quickly as possible. Oh yeah, done and dusted, tick that off, we're good to go. It's, choose the players that we think are going to be able to progress in the model and in the system. The late developer program is massive for us. I'm a big believer in it. You recognize that in American sports in particular, it's those January babies or January players, that are the bigger physical athletes. And that has always tended to suit American sport. American football, be it ice hockey or whatever it is, I mean, they're looking for the beasts, the big boys. And this game's different. You're not going to be a beast. And look at some of the best teams and some of the best players in the world. You look at Spain, you look at Barcelona of the old days, and they were all tiny, tiny players. They manipulate that ball so quickly that it doesn't matter how big you are, because it's going to take you so long to get or you won't even catch him.
Right.
And by the time you get to him, he hasn't got the ball, so you can't touch him, or it's a foul. So ultimately, it's how do you manipulate the space, how do you manipulate the ball, and have that do the work for you. And it all comes with soccer IQ, comes with understanding or spatial awareness, and comes with multitasking and being able to pick up all the different cues far quicker than your opponent. And that's what our focal point is in the academy, is looking for smarter ways to adapt these kids, and have them pick up those cues quicker and play faster and recognize danger quicker. And then it doesn't matter how big you are. So late developers are huge for us. And one of the success stories, if we're talking about it, was a late developer. He came into the program very early on. We found him on the outskirts as well in one of these indoor facilities, playing indoors football, soccer. I'll give indoor soccer to you guys, because I don't think that that's something we do outside.
Yeah.
So playing indoor soccer where the ball's bouncing off the walls and everything, can't stand that game. But again, as I said, it's quick, it's fast, builds a lot of skills too.
Sure.
And we found him there and brought him into the program. I mean, I remember he sent us nuts. He sent us nuts in the first month, showing up to training late, or, not telling us he couldn't get there, or we'd be halfway through a session and then he shows up, or wearing 2 different colored socks. It was chaos.
Yeah.
It was beautiful chaos.
Yeah.
Because he was such a magician on the ball. Until this day, he's still playing. He's currently with the Crown, so Charlotte FC's second program.
Wow.
And I mean, he's in and around that space, and what a wonderful player he always was. And he was a late developer his entire career with us. So you're talking about 7 years in the program, where he was always a late developer playing down a year. And because he just enjoyed the game and had nobody really poking away around him, or, asking why he wasn't playing age, or, he should maybe be playing up, or he's so good, put him here. No interference. He was just allowed to develop in the program. And he was one of the first ones that graduated through our program when Charlotte FC first came into the space. And they took him on board for their U17 program.
Wow.
Wonderful, wonderful player. So
Yeah.
there's a success story for you. And
Yeah.
again, it's
Fantastic.
nice for that to go out there, because when we tell a parent or a family, your kid's got something, your kid's talented. He's a little bit on the smaller side. He doesn't quite know how to handle his body yet. If he plays age, or he might get bullied off the ball, or maybe his decision making will be affected because he'll feel like he's got to make a quicker decision and it might be a mistake. It's good to make mistakes, don't get me wrong, but again, when you make mistake after mistake after mistake, it becomes psychological too. So you also have to look at the mental performance side, and 95% of the game is mental.
Sure.
And that's another thing that a lot of people don't look at in the youth game. It's he's not a good player.
Yeah, slow, or can't handle the ball, or whatever.
He's not a good player, but you delve deeper. What's affecting him? Where are the blockages? Can we somewhat remove those blockages and see if we can, manipulate that player and get the best out of him? And mental performance is huge aspect that isn't invested in the youth game, because it costs money.
Sure.
You want to bring a mental performance coach into your academy, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg, because they're expensive.
Right.
But, do we really need that? When we've got 10,000 kids paying, we're all right, Money's coming in one way or another,
Yeah.
5 go out, 5 come in. And that's just the way that sort of level of programming looks like. I mean, again, from 6 to 19 at a full academy, we've got 180 kids.
Yeah.
That's it, maxed out.
They're like a bludgeon hammer, and you're coming in like the end of a spear, just piercing right through and disrupting, like you said before.
We're just trying to do it the way we think works. Again, is it perfect? Probably not. Everybody has room to grow and to polish. I mean, we don't hold our hand up and say, we've got, the hidden secret. We're just bringing a model from outside into the US and trying to implement it and feel like it's the best way for development. And I just feel like we've been around 10 years now, and COVID was tough. COVID was very, very tough for us, being such a small club. We were a development academy, which was the top programming at that point for US soccer. And when COVID hit, they folded their program, which meant that was the league that we would compete in.
Right.
And we didn't have League 2, League 3, League 4, and all of those other things that we could fall back on. So when that happened, it was the ideal moment for the clubs around, to say, oh, they've got no league. Come to us. You're never going to make it. You're never going to be seen. There's no exposure. And what we kept saying was, why do you need exposure at this young age?
Right.
Develop. Work on yourself. Prepare, I mean, there's still plenty of time down the line. If exposure is needed, we can find that exposure for you down the line. It's not a problem. The salesmen here are very good. And that's all I'll say. They sell the game to the masses very well. But if you're looking for something different, and you're looking for the disruptor, and you're looking for a program that really cares and knows your kid's name and knows what happens in your household and knows if that kid has had a bad day at school or has had an unfortunate event take place, all of those things are fundamental to when the kid steps on the pitch to train or to play. And it's emotional, and it's psychological, and it's massive. And we are embedded in that too. We recognize that a kid that is maybe not performing to their level, there's deeper rooted issues that need to be, dug up, and we need to address.
That's incredible. Just the whole approach to everything, and I think now more than ever, Christian and I talk about this a lot, but people are more disconnected than ever before, although it's easier to communicate with each other than it ever has been before. I can text you, I can text you a week from now and see how you're doing and stuff like that, but it's just so easy to kind of fall apart from people. So I think it's really important. Well, we are out of time, my friend. We always close out the show with a funny question. I think I have one today. This is usually
I have one as well, so you go first though.
Okay, mine's not funny, but so my question for you is, what is it going to take for Charlotte FC to win the division and be the best team?
Charlotte FC meaning the pro team
Yeah.
in our...
Mm-hmm.
Listen, they've got everything they need. They've got a wonderful stadium. They've got, plenty of backing and support from a financial perspective. I think they are new to the market, relatively new when you look at an MLS club.
Sure.
I think investing in their youth and having a development academy or an academy program that is able to work with a player and build them through the process and get them to the first team is going to be is going to be the ultimate objective.
Mhm.
And I think once they can produce that pipeline on a regular basis, you're bound to have success.
Absolutely. Now, what was your funny question?
Oh yeah. So my funny question is, if you could pick 2 pro players and bring them down to 6 years old and make them go through your program, who would they be?
Oof.
And would you be making them better, or would it be because they're so good already?
I'd have to have Messi there.
Okay.
Just because I would want to sip on my coffee in the morning and watch him move that ball. Because at 6 years old, he was probably better than all of us. So yeah, I would definitely want Messi there. And one of my idols, I mean, I am an Arsenal fan, but one of my idols was Dennis Bergkamp. And what he could do with the ball as well was phenomenal. And I think I will leave you with that. That's a book that maybe you guys should read. And Dennis Bergkamp goes through his youth and how he became the player he is, and how he was able to change things up just by being a street baller. I mean, they would play games where they would have trees and rubbish bins and whatever as part of the game. So it was, how would you manipulate the ball off of an object and then be in the right place to receive it again, and it developed his understanding of the game. So
wow,
yeah, I've got a Dutch player there because obviously Johan Cruyff was very special too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Messi and Bergkamp would be my 2.
Good choices.
I'm really starting to not believe that he's not a documentary guy.
You are a documentary guy for sure.
2 documentaries and a book in one podcast.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I've ever read.
We're all out of recommendations now.
Took him 5 years to read each one.
There you go.
Well, you've been
Very
a fantastic guest. Thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.